Hi, I'm Marlene Gabauer from the Geek and Review, and I have Nikki Shaver here from Legal Technology Hub. And Nikki's going to tell us a little bit about what Legal Technology Hub is going to be doing at Legal Week.
That's right. Thanks, Marlene. Hi, everyone. So, Legal Week is coming up March 9th through 12th. We're super excited, especially to see what it's like for the first time at the Javits Center. And of course, we will be there. We hope all of you will come and see Legal Tech Hub there. We're actually going to be there in full force this year with representatives from our advisory team, Cheryl Wilson Griffin and Sam Moore, so you can find out more about our offerings there. Our sales team, of course, headed up by Alex Coop. Our content team, so Stephanie Wilkins will be there looking at everything that's going on. And if you have a news story, please seek her out. And our leadership team will also be there. We have a booth at stand 341 in the vendor hall. And it's really a great time to catch up on everything new in legal tech. So if you just want to stop by and chat and find out what's new and what's happening, feel free to come by. Also, if you want to find out more about our full suite of offerings across LTH Premium, our advisory services, our upcoming events, it's a great time to just stop by and say hi. And if you want to arrange a meeting ahead of time, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn at our company site, which is Legal Tech Hub, or at our website, legaltechnologyhub.com. We can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, it's a great conference, and it's so great to hear that you're going to have a preference. You're going to have a presence there. Welcome to the Geek and Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal industry. I'm Marlene Gabauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert. And Marlene, we spent a lot of time. It's actually only been the last few years, even though it feels like the last few decades, where we've talked about the promise of artificial intelligence. But today we're actually going to dig into the hard data of what is actually happening on the ground, especially in that solo, small, and mid-sized firms that make up pretty much most of the legal industry itself.
Yeah, and the ones that really aren't reported on as much, I think,
Yeah.
and so we love a good data story here at the Geek and Review. So we are thrilled to welcome back our good friend Niki Black. Nikki,
Yay.
hi Nikki. Uh, for those of you who don't know, Nikki's an attorney, a veteran legal journalist, and the principal legal insight strategist at 8 a.m. She's here to break down the newly released 8 a.m. Legal Industry Report 2026, and that provides a really incredible look at how legal professionals are navigating AI adoption, billing pressures, and systematic challenges to the justice system.
So, Nikki, welcome back to the Geek and Reviews. Good to have you back.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to this.
All right, so we'll jump right in. The 2026 data paints a really vivid picture of a profession rapidly adopting AI from the bottom up. Your report notes that 69% of legal professionals are now personally using general purpose AI tools for work, more than double from last year, I think.
Yep.
However, there seems to be a massive governance gap. So,
Governance. How do you spell that? I
what?
don't get it.
You don't get it? 43% of respondents say that their firm has no formal AI policy and no plans to create one, and just 9% are actively enforcing a written policy. Yikes. So, with individual adoption skyrocketing while organizational governments lag, what's wrong with this picture? How critical is the threat of the shadow AI in the legal sector right now? Are we sitting on this ticking time bomb of breached client confidentiality just because staff are using unsanctioned tools to meet daily targets?
Well, so that's a really interesting question. And uh, it was really interesting looking over the data this year because it's our third year tracking generative AI adoption and perspectives on generative AI. And it really did stand out that you had more than double the number of individuals using generative AI, more than twice as many compared to last year. And that's an unbelievable jump in our profession, right? Like for technology to be adopted that quickly. But the other really notable, another really notable statistic was the data points on governance and how there's not a lot of training or policies being rolled out. I do think that that information, those data points, in some ways, absolutely correlate to the people that that actually responded to the survey. So, as Greg had mentioned at the beginning, it was solo and small firms and some mid-sized firms predominantly. There are some large firms in there too, but I do think that the larger an organization gets, the more likely they are to have people devoted to governance and training. And the smaller it gets, the more of a lift that becomes. So I think that's reflected a little bit in the survey results. But I also think that this lack of guidance and from the firms is in part due to just how fast people are adopting this tool. I mean, it's hard to keep up and understand what the guidance should look like. So I think that contributes to it, that gap there as well.
Yeah. So if it's, a solo small firm, so let's say it's 1 to 4 or 5 attorneys, um, I mean, do they really need an official governance package, or is it, I mean, how do they do that? Is it something actually write down, or is it just something everyone just kind of agrees to?
Just thinking
Well,
about the news this morning, I was like, yes, they definitely need a governance policy.
right. I, I mean, I think every firm needs guidance and training on AI. Uh, And if it's a solo, then you're guiding and training yourself, but once you have employees, you need to have something, and AI makes it really easy to create this, to come up with a plan, so why not use the tool to help your firm figure out how to provide this information and create some guardrails for your employees. So, I think there's a real simple solution to the problem, and it's
Yeah.
to use the tool that you need to give guidance on.
You use the AI to help you AI.
Right. At least how to get started. I think it definitely helps you get the information you need and collect it and start a draft, right? And then from there, you do what you're supposed to do, which is edit, revise, ensure accuracy, do a little legal research, and then roll it out, right?
Yeah. Well, let me transition a little bit here from just the firm to talk about the
Mhm.
transparency between the firms and the clients itself. So in the report, I think it explicitly notes that, client driven pressure remains pretty small when it comes to asking for, hey, if you're using AI, I need to see some cuts in my bill for this. But then when we look at the corporate side, like the ACC and Everlaw data indicates that like 60% of corporate clients have no idea if their firms are using AI or not. And so, I mean, if there's a lack of client pressure in there, reported by your respondents, and there's a temporary illusion based on the retail nature of solo and small firm clients, how quickly do you think that that all of a sudden that demand is going to start increasing and people are going to say, you should be using AI and my bill should be getting smaller?
Well, that's such an interesting question and issue. I've long said that corporate counsel and some of the most sophisticated legal consumers are corporate counsel and insurance companies, right? Because they are uh, sophisticated consumers of legal services. Both of them buy legal services from lawyers, um, and obviously know a lot about how much time it should take to get these legal services performed. So I've always thought that you would see them initially, those two different groups of people really putting the pressure on to use these tools, increase efficiency, and reduce costs in a very sophisticated way because they're sophisticated consumers. And I do think that you're seeing from the data coming out about corporate counsel that that's what's happening. And
Hmm.
when you talk about traditional legal consumers, when it's not B2B, which is kind of what corporate counsel and
Yeah.
insurance are, um, th- you know, when you think about certain types of legal consumers, criminal criminal law, family law, trusts and estates, these are just individuals and need to hire a lawyer for some reason. Oftentimes they don't expect to have to hire the lawyer. They have to hire the lawyer without planning to. And so they aren't sophisticated legal purchasers of legal services. So I think it's going to take a lot longer for them to expect that kind of transparency or that kind of demand because they don't understand what the practice of law looks like. They're just trying to get a lawyer to solve their problem. So they don't know whether it's being done efficiently or not. And they can't
Mm.
compare apples to apples, like, or apples to oranges. I don't know what the right comparison is, but
Yeah.
that
Oh,
these,
fruit.
the legal services performed with AI versus legal services that were performed without it. They don't know the difference between those two yet. But once
Mm.
they start using it more and more in their own work, they may start to want to understand how lawyers are using it. And I think that gap will start to close, but it is pretty interesting and significant.
Let me twist that question a little bit. Are are lawyers seeing that clients are showing up with like AI generated information to kind of help them talk the talk when they meet with a lawyer? Or are they showing up better prepared? Because that would seem well, because Marlene and I were talking to a class of students this morning, and one of the things that I brought up was we're seeing more pro se uh, uh, filings that are actually pretty sophisticated because they're starting to use the AI tools to help them draft their complaints. And like it or not, the AI is getting better, and it's making some of these very complicated issues more easily accessible for pro se clients to litigants to come into courts with. So I'm curious, are you hearing anything with uh, attorneys with their clients showing up with more information or at least paperwork that they printed out from ChatGPT?
Well, that isn't an issue I've spoken to any attorneys about, but I think it's a really good supposition. It used to be that people were a little frustrated with the Google lawyer, right? They'd show up with thinking they know a lot about a topic because they Googled it. And I've got to imagine you've got a little bit of that same thing going on with ChatGPT in some ways, or these other generative AI tools, uh, in that the clients are doing a lot of research ahead of time, but they may be going down completely wrong roads in their research, down the wrong path because they don't really understand what the procedural aspects are supposed to look like or what the actual legal issues are. So I do think in some, depending on the sophistication of the legal consumer, it may be helpful or it may actually just take longer to walk them off that path or off that plank and explain to them
Yeah,
that's not the actual issue you're dealing with here. And this is what you're dealing with. And then you got to butt heads with them because it sounds great when it comes out of generative AI, right? So
sure
I think,
does.
yeah, I think you got part of that going on. And then I think that pro se issue is really interesting. I just read a hallucination case where the pro se um, plaintiff brought so many motions and filed so many memos and it sounded like they were driving defense counsel nuts because at one point the court basically said, defense counsel, you're obsessed with their AI. You stop asking about it. They can use it. But, I think it's almost overwhelming. You know how lawyers with, you talk about a flurry of papers filed on a Friday before a holiday or something. I think it kind of feels like that sometimes on the defense side when you've got a pro se plaintiff, because all of a sudden you're overwhelmed with papers, some of which don't make a lot of sense, and you have to unwind it and then respond to it. So I think it's interesting, all these different things happening and happening so quickly in our legal system.
Yeah, and I'm like the pro se aside, it's like I also wonder how like some of these recent rulings are going to sort of impact clients' use of some of the Gen AI tools. I mean, I suppose if they're using, well, I don't even know. I mean, if whether they're using clothes or not, but I mean, if they're like doing their own research and then sharing research with their attorney, is whatever they're providing still privileged? And that's also something they got to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wrote a couple of different articles about that for the Daily Record. And there's that split right now. There's only two courts that have even looked at that, apparently, as far as I know. And there's a split in the federal district courts about that. One says it's privileged, one says it's or one says it's not privileged, another says it's work product, and so one's treating it as a third party that the information's been disclosed to. It's a little more complex. The factual scenarios are different, but essentially, third party that it's disclosed to, someone else saying no, it's work product and it's protected. So it'll be interesting to. I mean, I think it's got to go that way. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to use the cloud or email or anything else.
or
But
anything. Exactly.
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
we're going down a different path here, but it's a really interesting issue. I'm glad you raised it.
Yeah. So I'm going to tee up this next pretty straightforward question with a little bit of background. So the report highlights nearly 50% of legal professionals expect AI to change billing practices, and 25% expecting reduced billable hours per matter, and 22% anticipating more flat fees. And Thomson Reuters has recently warned of an impending AI bubble, noting that law firms are currently seeing record profits largely driven by rate hikes rather than passing on AI driven efficiency gains. It's like I have issues with that statement,
Yeah.
but that is that about those gains, but that's what's reported. So the question is, you know, we're seeing, structural conflict between firms investing heavily in efficiency and still remaining wedded to the billable hour. So, are you know, are are you sensing that firms are actually prepared to sort of abandon this hourly billing in favor of value based pricing? Are we really there?
I think for large firms, that's going to be really challenging in the short term. And I've never practiced law in a large firm, but people that I know well who have and who are partners in these firms have said that and explain it to me that the compensation structure and everything else about how those firms function are so tied into the billable hour that it's not just a matter of changing how you bill. You're going to have to change so many other aspects of how that firm is structured um, and all the cascading things that are impacted by that. So I think from the large law firms, their pressure is actually going to come from two places to change their billing structure from in-house counsel that's requiring them to change it because otherwise they're going to use someone else. And also all the boutique firms that spin off. Um, actually, three. The second one is the boutique firms. This has always happened. People leave these large firms, spin up a boutique firm in one practice area, take a bunch of the clients with them, and are able to you know, use AFAs and charge in different ways that undercut and compete with that hourly billing and still provide the same level of big law service and knowledge that these people have and expertise. So you're going to see more and more of that happening, I think, especially as these firms start chopping people off the way they're doing because of AI. They're reducing the associate levels and admins, but eventually they're going to start chopping off some of the um, not just entry level associates, but actual associates and possibly maybe equity partners, non-equity partners. Who knows what they're going to do? But the other place I think you're going to see it from is solo and small firm lawyers starting to be able to, that may have prior experience, but are going to be able to start competing and in ways that technology is already enabled, but at a much higher level. Um, and potentially also do the same thing that I think that you're going to see these boutique firms doing, undercut the pricing and provide similar levels of service that these folks are used to, but at a lot lower price. So I think you're going to see that. They're not going to do it willingly, but it's going to happen.
One thing that almost always or the issue that pops up every time there's any kind of change in the legal marketplace is also, well, in-house counsel is just going to handle more of their work in-house. Do you think that's also a possibility, or we always project that, but it never really actually happens?
I think that with AI, it's already happening in just the way that you suggested it would happen with consumer clients. They are doing a lot of that initial work that they would have had to hand off and handing it off in much better shape where a lot of the initial legwork is done. And then they want them to finalize the product or provide the final answer. So I think that it is actually already happening. And the Claude co-work legal tool, if I'm not sure the exact name of it, but that was just released, I think is going to expedite that process even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of Claude Cowork, so pretty much up until maybe a couple of months ago, the AI was ask it a question, get an answer. So in the survey, it showed like legal research is like 58% usage for legal research, 49% use it for drafting documents. This is where I give it a specific task, it comes back with an answer, and I may clean that up a little bit, but that's about it. It's give and take. Now we're getting more into the agentic AI where you're basically giving it instructions on this is the output I want you to do. Now you go out and do this, where the systems kind of work autonomously. So if a significant portion of the legal industry is still struggling to figure out how to draft basic government's policies for just the let me ask it a question, get an answer part of it with this text generation chatbots, how equipped are we with handling the complex and even ethical and malpractice risk associated with autonomous agentic AI tools?
It's a good question, and part of it comes down to how do you define agentic AI in the context of legal work, which is a big dispute that a lot of people have, or debate, if you will. Is it kind of like how the LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters of the world have things set up, where you have a generative AI chatbot at the front that can answer some legal questions, and then when you want to go deeper, determines which subscriptions you have to their products or integrations, and then goes to those and pulls the information out that you need. Um, I mean, that's arguably agentic AI, but some people say, no, that's not agentic AI because it's in a closed system. It's not using the internet to go out and do other things, which some people claim are really the practice of law. Is it, do you let it just go out there and practice law for you? I don't know. So it not even having a full definition of agentic AI, and then the fact that it's already being built into a lot of legal technology tools, and lawyers may not realize they're using it, assuming we agree that that is agentic AI, which I think it is. Um, I think they're already using it, and in some cases, and th- it's just more of a closed system, so it reduces the risk a little, and they still have that obligation to review the output and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
So you still have that framework in place.
Well, let me define it a different way then. Let's say
Sure.
I'm using Claude Cowork, which can actually read and write files on my own system. It can search the internet. It can interact with Chrome web browsing, so it can browse the web, not just like on the back end, but actually using your browser going
Right.
out. I mean, this is going to be a seismic shift, I think, in how attorneys use the AI tools, or at least clever attorneys use the AI tools to go out and maybe working on 10 or 15 different things all at once, and bringing back results and then analyzing those and saving files, updating files. It just seems like we're ill prepared for the regulating that and governance on that. I just don't. I, I just don't see us ready for it. Do you?
Well, no, I think you're right. I just switched to Claude and have been playing around with co-work. And there was that LinkedIn post where there was was it an M&A lawyer, a corporate lawyer talking about Solo, I think how he uses co-work, and some of the things that he said that he was doing gave me pause, because we all know that these tools, once they start diving into actual documents that are have complex information in them, they start making things up right away. It doesn't matter which one you're using. They make things up, and then when they take whatever they made up and they apply it to something else, which is what would happen in this scenario, it just becomes a game of AI telephone. And so that's where I get a little,
Yeah.
the output is going to be so bungled that I don't understand. Is that the right word, bungled? But
Bungled works.
um,
Yeah.
that I don't understand how you really can, in the current state, use it in that way, especially when it is agentic and it does go out and get information and pull that information in and grab information from your documents and client files. And I think that right now I don't see that in the way that this person had talked about. I don't know if you're familiar with the post I'm talking about.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, it's like he left it alone and he let it go and it analyzed all these things and then came back and he sent the letters or emails off to opposing counsel in the middle of the night. And it's like, and it made it sound like, how was he carefully reading the output and how could he be analyzing the contracts that carefully and then coming up with these emails that made sense that didn't have hallucinations in them? And it didn't sound like, to properly review and ensure that that's not happening, it would take an hour, I would think, at least just to go over what they did. So I'm not sure. It sounds good on paper, but I'm not
Yeah.
convinced, just like you are, that the output at this point is going to be reliable and trustworthy, and therefore, like our governance on it, if and that impacts the ability to provide guidance on using it. I think we're in a weird place because the tech's advancing so quickly. Um, And there is a lot of potential, but the reality of it still seems a little questionable when you're getting into things that complex.
Yeah. Yeah, I always worry about the things that go viral that sound a little too good to be true.
Uh-huh.
So we'll
Yeah.
see. There was some questioning. I think underneath what he was saying was pretty accurate in the broad scope of things. I think there were some issues being taken with the specifics on that.
Well, and I
But
think
yeah, it's
this was written by AI, by the way, because there was a lot of not this, but that's going on
yeah,
throughout it. So it was
some
written
M
by AI.
dashes, some
And dashes.
it's not this, it's this.
So you
Yeah,
wonder
yeah.
if it even said what he wanted it to say, you know? But who
I didn't
knows?
mean that. So I know that the report had information on access to justice, so I want to shift the conversation a little bit to that. Um, so a strong majority of the respondents, 76%, are very optimistic that AI is going to help narrow this access to justice gap, and 72% admit the sheer cost of legal services is still a primary barrier. So, and then 62% of lawyers agree that the rule of law itself is currently under threat. So, there's a real fear, I think, that AI could create kind of a two-tiered justice system. Premium, highly accurate AI for wealthy clients, and um, risks of hallucination prone type of solutions for pro se litigants. Um, and I think that's a rather sort of gloom and doom myself, but how does the profession harness technology to democratize legal access and restore institutional trust rather than inadvertently widening the socioeconomic divide?
I think the answer is in the data points that you just stated. Because access to justice is not just a single shot solution. There's no one way to solve it. You absolutely need greater funding. And I think that I agree with the respondents. That's the primary thing that's going to help fix access to justice in the way that it should be fixed, where it helps the little people, the average person, get the legal help that they need instead of ending up with this top level thing where it's the big four competing and starting to provide legal services in ways they weren't able to because they weren't licensed lawyers. And then it just makes it so that the top level is able to obtain legal results in a way that is more affordable. Uh, like businesses are able to do that. I think that when you have better funding and then you have the technology that supports the people trying to represent, public defenders, legal aid lawyers that are on the front lines, on the ground, trying to bridge that gap to people that can't afford lawyers. Um, if they're getting paid through better funding, and then they're able to use generative AI tools, especially ones built into trusted legal tools that they can that are guardrailed on the back end where they can trust the output, and that are developed more slowly in order to ensure that output. When they use those trusted tools and they're on the ground, um, it allows, helping people that need the help. It allows them to get paid because of better funding, and then provide more efficient and effective legal services, represent more people, and provide them with a higher quality of representation. And I'm not just saying that, I've spoken to lawyers. I had a lawyer reach out to me after one of the articles that I wrote saying that he is a legal aid attorney and started using ChatGPT when it first came out, and that he was able to use it to take on more clients because it increased his efficiency so well. So he could take on more assigned clients. And I think that that's when you combine those two things, it really does make it easier for to help democratize access to legal services rather than creating that two-tiered system. But without the funding, I think it just ends up with a two-tiered system.
Yeah. Before we roll out and ask you the crystal ball question, and is there anything else in the report that stood out to you that may have been a surprise, or uh, something else we haven't covered?
I think we can
Well, I
highlight those.
thought that the second half of the report is the part that was really uh, it was really interesting to track the AI trends, and then the second half of the report where we dove into the systemic legal issues, access to justice, and how lawyers and non-lawyers were looking at the rule of law. I thought those data points were really interesting because when you looked at the data from lawyers versus other legal professionals. I don't love the term non-lawyers, but other legal professionals. Um, you really did see different perspectives, in large part driven by the roles that they play in the justice system. So I thought that that was super interesting, and um, it's interesting times, and I think having data like this helps you get some perspective on what's happening with all the rapid technological advancements and how that could potentially impact the administration of justice.
Nice. Well, definitely something to check out. So, Nikki, what are some before we get to the crystal ball question? What are some resources that you've been using to kind of help you keep up with all of the changes that are going on in the legal industry lately?
What are your go-tos?
Well, I go old school. I kick it old school with my RSS feed reader, Feedly.
Love my RSS feeder.
So that's one of the primary ways that I track what other people in the industry that I trust are saying. And then I also am very active on LinkedIn, so that helps a lot too. But for me, it really is following the blogs of people that I trust and um, seeing what they're saying. One thing that's a little challenging now is some people are moving things over to Substack. So it starts to make it harder there's no RSS feed and you got to like check out Substack separately and follow the right people on Substack. And so that makes it a little bit hard when a few people have, that I've really
So
enjoyed
you're
working
saying
with.
we're part of the problem
Are you on Substack?
then? Yeah.
Exactly what she's saying.
Then yeah, I guess you are part of the problem. Damn you.
We're testing it out.
Well, but you also have the podcast. Is that behind the wall on Substack?
No,
No,
there's
it's
nothing
no.
behind the wall.
We still put the blog and everything out. It's just we're testing Substack just for fun.
I
Um,
get it. I mean, people can really create community and monetize what they're doing it more easily on Substack. And I've looked at it myself. It just doesn't make sense for me right now, but I see why you might be. And it gets to the point where if a whole bunch of people move there, then you got to start just working Substack into your day,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
making
now
my life harder, you guys.
it actually is time for the crystal ball question. So looking ahead over the next 3 to 5 years, Nikki, like what do you feel is the single biggest challenge or change that you see coming for the legal industry that firms should start preparing for right now?
I mean, it's a bigger picture of everything
Pick
we've talked
one.
about. It's, it's all the structural impacts that are going to come from all the changes that are happening right now, in large part driven by AI, but not just AI. The pricing changes and the ability for smaller firms to compete with larger firms, and it's not just and that applies to law schools too. The law schools. I just spoke at my law school last week, and I talked to some of the deans afterwards, and they're all struggling to figure out what do they do? How do they teach tech? How do they implement it? How do they prepare the students? How do they change what the law school looks like possibly? That you're going to have to start preparing them more for solo practice, preparing them for other types of roles, um, making sure they understand how to use tech to allow them to excel in those roles. And so it's not just law firms, and I think client expectations are going to change. It's this major structural change that's going to be happening really quickly. And so that's going to be the biggest challenge is figuring out how to adapt within those huge changes taking place,
Mhm.
I think.
It's a big
Yeah.
changes in time restraints.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Nikki Black, Principal Legal Insight Strategist at 8 a.m. Thanks again for coming back and joining us on the podcast and walking us through the future of the legal profession. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. And thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn and Substack.
And Substack. Sorry, Nikki. Nikki, for our listeners who want to follow your work, read your columns, and download the 2026 8 a.m. Legal Industry Report, where should they go?
Well, the legal industry report's available on 8am.com under reports. So definitely go there and download it. I think you'll find it to be very interesting. I wrote it and I think there's a ton of great stuff in there. And our team did a fantastic job supporting me writing it, and design's fantastic in my opinion. It looks great.
Awesome.
And to follow me, LinkedIn, LinkedIn's the best place because I post my columns, and I have my newsletter there, Legal Tech Reality Check. So LinkedIn would be the best place to connect with me.
Awesome.
Great. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you, Jerry, and bye, everybody.